thinking about when Justice Southbury started out, quaint compared to what we are seeing today, the threats we are seeing to justice today. And let's remember that love cannot exist without justice. I am no way trying to minimize the injustices that we stood up for against in 2020. For example, we were all horrified by the video of George Floyd as one officer murdered him while two other policemen looked on. There was some effort to cover this up initially, but with video and eyewitnesses willing to testify, this and many other similar injustices could be seen as cases of individual police officers who acted contrary to police standards that were established in almost all police departments across the United States. Compare that to now, where we have a national police force that is nominally under the control of the Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. With U.S. Congress's blessings, this police force has tripled in size this year as they attempt to detain or deport 3,000 people each day in order to reach a goal of 1 million people this year. Those people were supposed to be violent criminals or, quote, the worst of the worst. ICE officers are instructed to wear nondescript clothing and drive unmarked vehicles so as not to identify what agency they are with, and they're encouraged to use masks to hide their personal identity. They have picked up people and taken them away without any due process and or notice to their families. They have sent some to prisons, sometimes outside of this country. Some of you have heard that the conditions, even here in the U.S., are horrific as far as overcrowding existing facilities and inadequate food for those being detained. And these officers have used their weapons indiscriminately on citizens. The nighttime raid on an apartment building in Chicago last week, with officers rappelling off of Black Hawk helicopters and zip-tying children as they dragged them from their beds, were as bad as any Hollywood image from a dystopian movie I can imagine. This is all under the direction not of an individual policeman, not of an individual police department, but of the President of the United States and his Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, and Immigration Czar Tom Homan, and Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. We're getting a lot of good honks today. Must be the nor'easter bringing them. These people have identified a large swath of the U.S. population as being their targets. Their policies and actions are, in my opinion, violations of the U.S. Constitution, unlawful under recent case law, and just plain uncivilized and immoral. These groups of citizens have been identified with a complete lack of precision with name-calling that could be applied to almost anyone in the United States, including all of us. As I said in an early gathering of Justice Southbury about my reaction to hearing the terms woke and Antifa, I was raised to be awake and aware and to always be against fascism. Although there is no such organization as Antifa, we are hearing that as Antifa and the radical left that are behind the violence in our cities. These are false narratives being disseminated by the current administration. There is no extraordinary new level of violence in our cities. Crime rates are dropping. And definitely there is no violence that I've seen or heard about against the government. Violence is never good. But as long as there are human beings, unfortunately, there is going to be domestic violence between different groups, including families. But this is not in any way an insurrection. And yet the president and vice president are speaking often about needing to apply the Insurrection Act. In fact, most of the violence that I see seems to be that provoked by the ICE officers. Of course, there is video of violence being seen on news channels like Fox, but these have been shown to be from other countries or from years ago. You would think that after paying a fine of $800 million Fox would have learned that deliberate lying is not good business policy. So there is no longer just one rotten apple in a few police departments like we used to have 5 years ago. This is about a deliberate U.S. government policy to establish an unconstitutional form of government under the control of a few for the financial benefit of those few. As many have pointed out, although we have had corruption in government before, think of Spiro Agnew taking bribes in paper bags in the White House while he was vice president, we have never seen the levels of corruption for the financial gain of a few like we have seen in the last 8 months. Of all the groups that have been singled out, the Hispanic community has, in my opinion, been hardest hit. This month, as you know, is Hispanic Heritage Month. Rick has told me that many people who he had asked to come and speak today were uncomfortable being out in public. That in and of itself just shows you how horrific things are. Fear is prevalent, and as many of you have surmised, that is one of the objectives of the U.S. government policy.